The winter wind cut through my threadbare jacket as I huddled beneath the overhang of an abandoned storefront on Tremont Street. At 19, I'd already spent 2 years on Boston's unforgiving streets after my mom's boyfriend kicked me out when she died. Morning light barely penetrated the heavy cloud cover, promising another gray day as I gathered my few possessions into my worn backpack. The shelter had been full last night, forcing me to find warmth in the 24-hour laundromat, until the owner chased me out at dawn. My stomach growled painfully as I counted the loose change in my pocket. $3.87. Not enough for a proper meal, but maybe enough for something hot to drink. The corner cafe sometimes let me sit if I bought something small, and the barista occasionally slipped me day-old pastries when her manager wasn't looking. Fairmount Park sprawled before me as I took a shortcut toward the cafe, frost glittering on bare branches like tiny diamonds. Despite my circumstances, I couldn't help appreciating the peaceful beauty of early morning, when the city seemed to hold its breath before the daily chaos began. A child's delighted laughter broke the silence, drawing my attention to a little boy playing near the frozen pond. His bright blue coat stood out vividly against the monochrome landscape as he ran along the path, a carefree smile lighting up his face. No adult seemed to be watching him, which struck me as odd for this neighborhood known for its dangerous reputation. The boy appeared to be about 6, too young to be alone, especially near ice that might not be fully frozen. My heart stopped when I saw him dart toward a squirrel, his small feet hitting a patch of black ice hidden beneath a dusting of snow. Time seemed to slow as he tumbled forward, his head striking the corner of a stone bench with a sickening sound that carried across the empty park. I was running before I even realized I'd moved, my own hunger and cold forgotten as I reached the crumpled form in the blue coat. Blood seeped from a gash on his forehead, staining the pristine snow crimson, and his eyes remained closed despite my gentle attempts to wake him. "Hey, little guy, can you hear me?" I called, carefully checking his pulse the way I'd learned in a first aid class at the shelter. His heartbeat fluttered beneath my fingertips, present but unsteady, and his breathing seemed shallow and irregular. My fingers trembled as I searched his pockets for any identification, finding only a sleek phone that looked more expensive than anything I'd ever owned. The locked screen displayed a background photo of the boy with a stern-faced man in an impeccable suit, their matching green eyes the only indication they might be related. The emergency call option glowed at the bottom of the screen, and I pressed it without hesitation. A single contact appeared. Dad. No name. Just that single designation that somehow seemed more ominous than reassuring given the obvious wealth the phone suggested. When the call connected after just one ring, the voice that answered sent chills down my spine. Deep, commanding, with a subtle accent I couldn't place. "Theodore, where are you? You were supposed to wait with Mrs. Lancaster until I finished my meeting." "This isn't Theodore," I said, my voice shaking slightly from both cold and nervousness. "My name is Maya. I found a little boy who fell and hit his head in Fairmount Park near the pond. He's unconscious and bleeding. I think this is his father's number." The silence that followed was so absolute I thought the call might have dropped. Then the voice returned, harder now, with an edge that made the hair on my arms stand on end. "Is he breathing? Don't move him. I'm coming now." "Yes, he's breathing, but he needs medical attention right away," I insisted, cradling the phone while keeping my other hand on the boy's wrist to monitor his pulse. "I should call an ambulance." "No ambulance." He cut me off sharply. "No authorities. I'm 3 minutes away. Keep him warm. Don't speak to anyone who approaches you." The background noise suggested he was already moving, doors slamming and engines starting. Before I could respond, he spoke again, his voice slightly muffled as if addressing someone else. "Security breach at the park. Theodore is down. Get Sullivan and the medical team there now." Then back to me with chilling precision. "Exactly where are you?" "Near the east entrance, by the stone bench next to the pond," I answered, shivering as I removed my only jacket to cover the small, still form. "Please hurry. He hasn't moved or made any sound since falling." True to his word, barely 3 minutes later, the roar of powerful engines shattered the morning quiet. 3 black SUVs with tinted windows screeched to a halt at the park entrance, and men in dark suits emerged with military precision, weapons visible beneath their open coats. The man from the phone's background photo was instantly recognizable as he strode toward us, his expensive overcoat billowing behind him like a cape. His face was a mask of controlled fury and fear, eyes scanning the area with practiced efficiency before locking onto his son's still form. He dropped to his knees beside us, ignoring the snow soaking into what I guessed were $1,000 pants. "Theodore," he said, the name emerging as a prayer rather than a question, his hand gently touching the boy's face with a tenderness that seemed at odds with his intimidating presence. "He slipped on ice," I explained, suddenly feeling like an intruder in this private moment. "His head hit the corner of the bench. He hasn't woken up at all. I kept his neck still in case there's a spinal injury." His eyes met mine for the first time, green like his son's, but harder, assessing me completely in one glance. My homeless appearance, my thin frame, the smudges of dirt on my clothes, nothing escaped his notice, yet his expression remained unreadable as a man in a suit approached with a medical bag. "Mr. Knight," the medic said quietly, kneeling on the boy's other side. "Initial assessment shows a concussion and possible hypoglycemia. We need to stabilize him before transport." As the man worked, securing a neck brace and checking vital signs, the father never took his eyes off his son, the scar along his jaw whitening as he clenched his teeth. I found myself in the back of one of the SUVs, sandwiched between armed men in suits as we sped toward Massachusetts General Hospital, with sirens blaring from an escort vehicle. My presence seemed forgotten, as the father, Mr. Knight, cradled his unconscious son against his chest in the front passenger seat. The hospital staff clearly recognized Mr. Knight when we arrived, immediately directing us to a private wing with security checkpoints and hushed voices. I followed awkwardly, unsure of my place in this unfolding drama, but unwilling to abandon the little boy until I knew he was safe. "You found him," a nurse said softly as I lingered in the corridor outside Theodore's room. "Mr. Knight doesn't trust many people with his son, but he asked that you stay until he can speak with you." The request felt more like a command than an invitation, emphasized by the stone-faced security guard who maintained a discreet but watchful position nearby. I sank into an uncomfortable chair in the private waiting area, acutely aware of how out of place I looked among the polished marble and designer furniture. Hours passed with doctors and specialists streaming in and out of Theodore's room while I dozed fitfully, hunger gnawing at my empty stomach. A sympathetic nurse brought me a sandwich and coffee, whispering that it was on the house, though her quick glance toward Mr. Knight's security detail suggested otherwise. "Maya," his voice startled me awake from half-sleep, deep and controlled, yet somehow less threatening than before. Mr. Knight stood before me, his tailored suit replaced by a simple black sweater that probably cost more than I'd make in months if I had a job. I stood awkwardly, suddenly conscious of my dirty clothes and unwashed hair. "How is he? Theodore. Is he going to be okay?" The words tumbled out before I could stop them, genuine concern overriding my intimidation. "He's stable," Mr. Knight answered, studying me with unsettling intensity. "The doctors say you likely saved his life by finding him quickly and keeping him still. Theodore has type 1 diabetes. His blood sugar dropped dangerously low while in Mrs. Lancaster's care, causing him to become disoriented before he fell." His jaw tightened as he mentioned the caretaker, and I sensed this Mrs. Lancaster had already faced consequences for her negligence. "The head injury is mild, thankfully. No bleeding on the brain, though they're monitoring him closely. He's awake now and asking about the angel who helped him." The unexpected softness in his voice when speaking of his son's words caught me off guard. "I'm glad he's okay," I said sincerely, gathering my worn backpack. "I should probably go and let you two. I've had my people look into you, Maya Winters," he interrupted, causing me to freeze mid-movement. 19 years old, homeless for the past 2 years since your mother's death, no criminal record, previously enrolled at Boston Community College studying nursing before financial hardship forced you to withdraw. Theodore needs specialized care during his recovery, monitoring his glucose levels, ensuring he takes his medications, maintaining his routine. His regular nurse has proven unreliable. I find myself in need of someone who can temporarily fill this role. The implication hung in the air between us, unspoken, yet unmistakable. "You're offering me a job?" I asked incredulously, certain I must have misunderstood. "But I'm not qualified. I only completed 1 semester of nursing courses. Your qualifications are that my son trusts you and that you acted with competence in a crisis," Mr. Knight stated flatly, as though this explained everything. "The position includes room and board at my residence, appropriate compensation, and the opportunity to resume your studies once Theodore has recovered." My mind reeled at the offer, a way off the streets, a chance to finish my education, and the means to help a child who clearly needed someone in his corner. Yet the calculating look in Mr. Knight's eyes told me this arrangement would come with strings attached I couldn't yet see. "What exactly would this job entail?" I asked cautiously. hyper-aware of the security personnel pretending not to listen nearby. And why me instead of a professional caregiver or nurse? His lips curved slightly. Not quite a smile, but an acknowledgement of my directness. You would live in my home, monitor Theodore's health, accompany him to appointments, and ensure his routine remains consistent during recovery. As for why you, professionals can be bought, their loyalty questionable. You, however, have nothing to sell and no connections that present a security risk. The brutal honesty of his assessment stung, but I couldn't deny its truth. I was a nobody with no one, which apparently made me trustworthy in his eyes. I need time to think about this, I said, gathering what little dignity I possessed. Your alternative is returning to the streets in the middle of Boston's coldest winter in a decade, he replied, checking his watch. Consider quickly, Ms. Winters. My driver will take you to my residence regardless. Theodore wishes to thank you personally when he's released tomorrow morning. 24 hours later, I stood in the marble foyer of a penthouse overlooking Boston Harbor, sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows that showcased a panoramic view of the city I'd only ever seen from ground level. Mr. Knight, who I now knew was Alexander Knight, led Theodore into the apartment, one hand protectively on his son's shoulder. Angel, Theodore exclaimed when he saw me, breaking free from his father's grip to wrap his small arms around my waist. The unexpected warmth of his embrace brought tears to my eyes that I quickly blinked away before his father could notice. Alexander showed me to my quarters, a guest suite larger than any apartment I'd ever lived in, with its own bathroom featuring a shower big enough for 3 people and a soaking tub positioned before yet another stunning window. Your clothes will arrive shortly, he said, noting my confusion at the empty closet. Before I could ask what he meant, a woman entered carrying several garment bags and boxes. I'm Claire, Mr. Knight's assistant, she explained efficiently. I've brought a selection based on the measurements and preferences we could determine. The blue would be appropriate for dinner tonight. My shock must have shown on my face because Alexander actually chuckled, the sound surprisingly warm from such an intimidating man. You'll find I value efficiency, Ms. Winters. Dinner is at 7. Claire will show you Theodore's medical regimen in the meantime. Over the following days, I settled into a routine that felt surreal compared to my previous existence. Mornings began with checking Theodore's glucose levels, preparing his carefully portioned breakfast, and administering his medication under the watchful eye of a private physician who visited daily. Did you always want to be a nurse? Theodore asked one afternoon as we worked on his schoolwork in the sunlit study. His recovery had been swift, his resilience remarkable for a child who'd experienced such trauma. Since I was about your age, I answered, helping him with a math problem. My mom got sick when I was little, and the nurses who took care of her were so kind to both of us. I wanted to help people the same way. Theodore considered this thoughtfully, his green eyes, so like his father's but softer, unburdened by whatever hardened Alexander's gaze, studying me intently. Dad says you were sleeping outside before you found me. Why didn't you have a home? The innocent question caught me off guard, and I searched for an age-appropriate explanation. Sometimes grown-ups have bad luck and lose their homes. My mom passed away, and I didn't have anyone else to help me for a while. But now you have us, he said with the simple certainty of childhood, returning to his multiplication tables. The statement lingered in my mind long after our study session ended, a dangerous comfort I couldn't afford to embrace. Sit, he said, closing the laptop before him. When I complied, he poured 2 glasses of amber liquid, sliding one toward me. You've adjusted well to this arrangement. Theodore speaks highly of you. The unexpected praise warmed me more than it should have. He's a remarkable child, I replied honestly. Intelligent, resilient, kind, qualities that must come from his mother. The moment the words left my mouth, I regretted them. Alexander's expression darkened momentarily. His mother abandoned him when he was 2, shortly after his diabetes diagnosis. She found a sick child inconvenient to her lifestyle and social ambitions. The bitterness in his voice revealed more emotion than I'd witnessed from him before. I'm sorry, I murmured, taking a small sip of what turned out to be expensive whiskey. That explains why he's so accepting of change. He's learned to adapt to abandonment. His eyes narrowed slightly, assessing me with new interest. You're perceptive, Ms. Winters, perhaps too much so. He leaned forward, his gaze intense. What have you deduced about my business during your stay here? The question felt like a test, one with potentially dangerous consequences for a wrong answer. That it's complex and far-reaching, I said carefully. Import, export, property development, various legitimate enterprises that require significant security and discretion. A hint of amusement touched his features, a diplomatic assessment, and the men who visit late at night, the conversations that stop when you enter a room, the weapons carried by my security team. I met his gaze directly, abandoning pretense, that your legitimate businesses might coexist with other interests that make you enemies and Theodore a potential target. Why else would a 6-year-old need armed guards to visit a park? Perceptive indeed, Alexander replied, his expression giving away nothing as he leaned back in his chair. Boston's Knight family has controlled certain aspects of this city's commerce for 3 generations. We provide protection, ensure fair business practices, and maintain order where legal channels fall short. The euphemisms didn't disguise the truth. I was living in the home of a major crime boss, caring for his son, and becoming dangerously comfortable with both. Why are you telling me this? Wouldn't it be safer for me to remain ignorant? Safety is an illusion, Maya, he said, using my first name for the first time. The moment you saved Theodore, you entered my world. Knowledge might be your only protection if certain situations arise. The following morning, a tense atmosphere permeated the penthouse as I prepared Theodore's breakfast. Security personnel moved with heightened vigilance, speaking in hushed tones that immediately ceased when I approached. Something's wrong, I whispered to Claire when she arrived with Theodore's updated medication schedule. Everyone's acting strange, and Alexander canceled our plans to visit the Science Museum today. Claire's normally composed expression faltered briefly. The Petrovs, a rival organization, have made certain statements regarding Mr. Knight's business interests. It's merely precautionary to keep Theodore home today. Despite the reassurance, I noticed additional security positioned throughout the building and caught fragments of conversation about increased patrols and vulnerability assessments. Whatever threat the Petrovs posed, Alexander was taking it seriously. 3 days later, Alexander relented to Theodore's persistent pleas to visit the New England Aquarium, though he insisted on elaborate security measures that seemed excessive even by his standards. 6 men accompanied us, positioned strategically around Theodore and me as we moved through the exhibits. "Look, Maya," Theodore exclaimed, pressing his small hands against the glass of the giant ocean tank, where colorful fish swirled in mesmerizing patterns. "That one looks like it's wearing a mask just like the superheroes in my comics." I smiled at his enthusiasm, momentarily forgetting the armed men watching our every move. "That's a queen angelfish. See how the dark circle on its forehead looks like a crown? In the wild, they help keep coral reefs healthy by eating organisms that could damage them." Theodore's face lit up with this new knowledge, and for a brief, precious moment, he was just a regular kid enjoying an aquarium trip, rather than the closely guarded son of a powerful man with dangerous enemies. That illusion shattered when I noticed a man watching us too intently from across the exhibit. "We need to go," our head security guard muttered into his earpiece, suddenly moving closer to Theodore and me. Possible Petrov associate identified near the penguin exhibit, initiating extraction protocol. Before I could process his words, Theodore was swept up by one guard, while another gripped my arm firmly, guiding us toward a service entrance I hadn't noticed before. The practiced efficiency of their movements suggested this scenario had been rehearsed repeatedly. As we rushed through the back corridors of the aquarium, a commotion erupted behind us, shouting, the sound of something heavy falling, then 3 sharp cracks that my mind refused to identify as gunshots despite knowing better. Theodore's face paled with fear as he clung to the guard carrying him. We emerged into bright sunlight where a different black SUV waited with engine running, doors flung open before we even reached it. "Get in now," barked the driver as security formed a human shield around us. Alexander was waiting at the penthouse, his calm exterior belied by the white-knuckled grip he maintained on his phone. When Theodore ran to him, he swept his son into a tight embrace, his eyes meeting mine over the boy's head with an expression I couldn't decipher. "Are you hurt?" he asked, the question directed at both of us as his gaze quickly assessed us for injuries. The concern in his voice seemed genuine, something I wouldn't have believed possible when we first met. I shook my head, still processing the terrifying reality of what had happened. Theodore was frightened, but remained calm. "Your security team handled everything, professionally." I chose my words carefully, aware of the child still clinging to his father. Later that night, after Theodore had finally fallen asleep, with the help of a children's meditation recording I'd discovered calmed his anxiety, Alexander found me on the terrace. The city lights sparkled below us like fallen stars, beautiful and distant from the violence that had nearly touched us hours before. They were targeting him, Alexander said without preamble, his voice tight with controlled rage. The Petrovs thought taking my son would give them leverage in our ongoing negotiations over the harbor shipments. The clinical way he discussed what would have been Theodore's kidnapping or worse sent a chill through me despite the warm spring evening. How can you live like this? How can you raise a child knowing he'll always be a target because of your business? Alexander's jaw tightened, the scar along it whitening slightly. You think I haven't considered alternatives? Every decision I've made since Theodore's birth has been to secure his future, to build something that will protect him long after I'm gone. I turned away, unable to reconcile the gentle father who read bedtime stories with the man who commanded an organization capable of violence I couldn't even imagine. And what happens to him if you're arrested or killed? Does he inherit this dangerous legacy whether he wants it or not? That's why he needs people who see him, not just my name, Alexander said quietly, moving to stand beside me at the railing. People like you, who care for him as Theodore, not as a knight. The implication hung between us, the unspoken suggestion that my temporary position could become something more permanent. I can't be part of this world, Alexander. The violence, the constant fear. I saved Theodore because no child deserves to suffer, but I never intended to enter this life. His hand covered mine on the railing, warm and surprisingly gentle for someone so dangerous. Yet here you are, 6 weeks later, still calling my son by a nickname only you use, still researching diabetic-friendly recipes that might tempt him when his appetite wanes, still singing him to sleep when nightmares wake him. Tomorrow, Alexander said after a long silence, I'm transferring $500,000 to an account in your name, enough to complete your education, secure housing, start a new life anywhere you choose. My driver will take you wherever you wish to go. The offer stunned me. Financial security beyond anything I'd imagined. Freedom from the streets that had been my reality for 2 years. You're letting me go? Just like that? His expression remained unreadable in the dim light. I protect what matters to me, Maya. Sometimes that means letting it choose its own path. He turned to leave, adding quietly, Theodore will be told you had a prior commitment. It's better that way. Morning found me packing the few belongings I'd arrived with, leaving behind the designer clothes and expensive gifts that had accumulated during my stay. The bank account information sat on my nightstand, the balance displaying a figure so astronomical it seemed unreal. Theodore's door remained closed as I passed, his morning medication routine already handled by a nurse Alexander had arranged overnight. The thought of leaving without saying goodbye crushed something inside me, but I understood Alexander's reasoning. Clean breaks heal faster, especially for children who had already experienced abandonment. I found Alexander in his study, focused intently on his computer screen, his expression hardening as he read whatever information it displayed. The car is waiting, he said without looking up. Claire has arranged temporary accommodations at the Westin until you decide where you'd like to settle. Thank you, I replied, the words inadequate for everything the past weeks had meant. Not just for the money, but for trusting me with Theodore, for showing me that family can be found in unexpected places. He finally looked at me, his green eyes softer than I'd ever seen them. We both know this isn't about money, Maya. It never has been. The unspoken emotion between us hung in the air, complicated feelings neither of us had dared name. The moment shattered as the study door burst open and Theodore ran in, still in his pajamas, eyes wild with panic. Maya's leaving? Francine said you hired her to replace Maya because Maya's going away forever. Alexander shot me a look of surprised confusion. This hadn't been the plan we'd discussed. Before either of us could respond, Theodore launched himself at me, wrapping his arms around my waist with desperate strength. Please don't go, he sobbed against my stomach, tears soaking through my shirt. Everyone leaves me. First Mom, then Mrs. Lancaster, now you. I thought you were different. I thought you wanted to stay with us. My heart broke at his words, at the raw pain of a child who'd experienced too much loss in his short life. I knelt to his level, gently wiping tears from his flushed cheeks. Teddy, your dad is giving me a chance to finish school, to become a real nurse like I always wanted. You can be a nurse here, he argued with a child's perfect logic. Dad can pay for your school. You can live with us and take care of me, and we can be a family. He turned to his father with pleading eyes. Tell her she can stay, Dad, please. Alexander's expression was one I'd never seen before. Vulnerability, uncertainty, perhaps even hope breaking through his carefully maintained control. The choice is hers, Theodore. We can't force people to stay if they wish to go. In that moment, looking between them, the powerful man humbled by his son's pain, and the little boy desperate not to lose another person he'd grown to love, I recognized the impossible choice before me: safety and normalcy, or risk and connection with these two complicated individuals who had somehow become important to me. Maybe, I said slowly, there's a third option. What if I stayed in Boston, finished my nursing degree, and remained part of Theodore's life without living here? A compromise that gives everyone something they need. Alexander's eyebrow raised slightly, the gesture I'd come to recognize as genuine interest. And what would you need from such an arrangement, Maya? His question carried layers of meaning beyond the obvious. Boundaries, I answered honestly. My own apartment, my own life outside of this world, and your word that Theodore's safety becomes the priority, above business, above tradition, above everything. The request hung between us, a challenge to everything Alexander had built. For several heartbeats, the only sound was Theodore sniffling as he looked between us, sensing the gravity of the moment without fully understanding it. I've built my empire to protect what's mine, Alexander said finally, his voice low and intense. Perhaps it's time to reconsider what protection truly means. He reached out, one hand resting on Theodore's shoulder, the other extended toward me in a gesture that offered more than just agreement. I took his hand, accepting not just his compromise but the complex future it promised. A future where lines between employee and family, between obligation and choice, between fear and love would blur in ways I couldn't yet imagine. The electricity of his touch confirmed what I'd been denying for weeks. My feelings for him had grown far beyond gratitude or professional respect. "So you're staying?" Theodore asked hopefully, his tear-stained face brightening. When I nodded, he threw his arms around both of us, creating a circle that felt dangerously like the beginning of something none of us had been looking for, but somehow all needed. Thank you all for following this story. If you enjoyed it, please write in the comments where you're watching from. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video, as your support is what keeps me creating content here.
А все равно, сути дела не меняет, зарплата плюс-минус везде там, больше, чуть меньше. И, наверное, это все, вот эта общая ситуация, наверное, у многих привела, во-первых, сфера развлечений, да, всякие там кредиты и так далее, настолько загоняют каждого в задницу человека. И об этом на самом деле никто так-то не говорит. Какое количество сейчас, допустим, даже в те же сложные времена такие, когда вот сейчас идет там специальная военная операция, да, где люди вообще умирают, в принципе, за какую-то сумму денег. То есть какая мотивация, то есть у мужика идти типа на войну, воевать и заработать денег? Потому что он вот в обычной жизни не понимает, типа, как реализовать себя. Он понимает, что он может пойти работать на какую-то работу, где зарплаты его все равно не будет хватать. Тут тоже двойственная сторона. Хорошо, когда она есть, плохо, когда ее нету. Да, вот это маленькая даже зарплаты. Но морально-то ты все равно подавлен. Ты понимаешь, да, я там пойду туда, смысла мне этого не принесет большого. Да, у меня там станет, если я вообще не работаю и буду работать за 50 тысяч, хорошо, что они у меня есть, я смогу там покушать себе купить, но это же дизмораль. Когда ты заходишь в интернет и видишь, как люди там в Дубае летают, покупают себе огромное количество автомобилей какие-то, много всего такого, что ты за эту зарплату себе никогда в жизни позволить не сможешь. И как человеку оставаться морально типа сильным? Что ему нужно делать? Наверное, во-первых, это, наверное, все от семьи исходит, да? То есть, какая семья у тебя, как она построена. Если ты один живешь, это сложно, да, ты будешь сам себя, но у тебя опять-таки, возможно, родители, если есть, которые друзья поддержат тебя в какой-то момент, хотя бы просто отвлекут тебя от этих мыслей. А если у тебя, к примеру, там семья, жена, к примеру, да, есть дети, то тут, наверное, поддержка только от них исходит какая-то. Вот. Чтобы не упиваться своих мыслях о том, что какая нынче сложная жизнь. И, наверное, других-то вариантов в принципе-то и нету. Какие вот еще варианты, в принципе, изменить, поменять свою жизнь настолько, чтобы она была, ну, казалась тебе удачной, да, реализованным себя в жизни, в чем-то. В чем, вот как проявляется на самом деле у нас реализованность? Наверное, у 90% случаев это финансовое благополучие, финансовая независимость. Это, наверное, одно из таких ключевых моментов, когда человек, наверное, считает себя реализованным, да, в этой жизни. То есть, как добиться этого? То есть, с учетом того, что даже возьмем нашу страну, да, сколько миллионов людей здесь живет, как каждому добиться этого результата? Непонятно. И с каждым годом просто ситуация становится все хуже и хуже. Все дорожает, люди зарабатывают либо столько же. Ну, даже если они зарабатывают столько же, на самом деле этого все уже недостаточно. К чему это все приведет на самом деле? В оконцове, наверное, мир погрязнет в большую депрессию в какую-то. Какие-то войны, возможно, или еще что-то, еще больше глобальных таких вещей, которые не приведут ни к чему хорошему на самом деле. Поддержка каждого человека именно для того, чтобы он держался, наверное, морально, заключается в том, что, ну, наверное, дом, в который ты приходишь, должен быть крепостью твоей, да, что это единственное должно быть место, где ты будешь чувствовать себя под защитой. Для этого было придумано, наверное, своя пещера изначально, потом свои какие-то чумы, палатки различные, да, потом все это превратилось, на данный момент это у нас дома, квартиры, в которые мы приходим и должны ощущать себя в безопасности, чтобы можно быть немного морально расслабленным с учетом того, что ты выходишь каждый день на работу, на улицу, и все равно давление вот это вот, оно все присутствует. Когда ты заходишь в магазин, видишь цены эти, да, и так далее, не можешь себе что-то там приобрести, позволить на ежедневной основе, это откладывает большой, наверное, отпечаток. Не, наверное, а точно. И поэтому, когда возвращаясь домой, ты чувствуешь, вот хотя бы есть типа уголок того места, куда ты можешь прийти. Уголок на самом деле человеку много тоже не надо. Можно хотеть большего, но на самом деле человеку одному много не надо. Да? Ему нужно спальное место, спокойное место, где можно подумать. Ну, это когда ты один, к примеру, да? Когда у тебя есть семья, к примеру, ты приходишь домой, опять-таки, тут хотя бы, да, поговорить о каких-то вещах. Просто об отрешенных вещах, наверное. И, возможно, при этих же условиях у тебя и появляется какая-то дополнительная мотивация для реализации себя. А когда у тебя нету ничего, вот это уже становится проблемой. И это у многих на самом деле. Что значит не иметь ничего? Тут, наверное, самое главное, дизмораль у человека еще возникает при том, что это уже, наверное, где-то в глубине души даже она возникает при даже хорошей финансовой подушке такой, которая у тебя есть, хороших финансовых деньгах, да, то есть, но нету вот внутреннего ощущения, к примеру, дружбы, семьи, любви и так далее. Это уже отдельно на самом деле разговор, потому что мы, вот, к примеру, можем взять, как сейчас вот Мелстрой, если кто-то смотрит, насколько тяжело обладать такими финансами и не иметь, по сути, ничего. Ни друзей, ничего не иметь. Так главное это получается для бедных главное деньги, для богатых главное какое-то внутреннее ощущение нужности, не из-за денег. Вот такое вот. И эта борьба какая-то такая и вот эти два слоя общества, богатые и бедные, они друг друга не понимают. На самом деле из-за этого, возможно. Потому что богатый человек, он уже не смотрит на деньги, он не считает эти деньги. Ему важно внутреннее вот это вот ощущение того, что он нужен без них даже. Это как Тони Старку сказали: а кто ты без костюма? На вот это я филантроп, тудым-сюдым, он сказал, да? Так и человеку, у которого много денег, ты задашь вопрос: а кто ты без денег? Ну, что ты представляешь себе без денег? Вот и это, наверное, возможно, таких людей богатых, как вот, например, там Мелстрой, задав ему этот вопрос: а кто ты без денег? Он на него ответить-то и не сможет. Обратная сторона людей бедных, да, вот если мы посмотрим, человеку